couple of years ago, I published a paper in a journal called Lex Naturalis in Volume 6, 2021. The paper is titled. What is the paper title? Paper is titled "From Being to Good to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness." And since this video is coming out right around the Semiquincentennial of the United States of America, our 250th anniversary of liberation from the British Kingdom, British Empire, Great Britain, I think it's important to remember the natural rights that we have that are unalienable rights, those of which named in the Declaration, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So on my view, I think those are negative rights, and they inhere in us because of the kinds of things we are. Because primarily, as a Christian, we're made in Christian view of this, so we're made in God's image. But even if you don't accept that, I think it's still reasonable to believe that we have unalienable rights that inhere in us, regardless of how we feel. So this paper tries to give a metaphysical, ontological underpinning for our natural rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Think of this as a kind of a meta-ethical natural law or meta-natural law account. So if natural law is the law that God has infused into the natural world for us to discover by rational means, consistent with but epistemically knowable, apart from revelation, then to defend such a view, one has to have, in my opinion, an antecedent metaphysics, an account of the nature of reality, and then an account of a meta-ethics, an account of the nature of good as good qua good. So this paper kind of comes on the heels of a book that I finished a couple years ago called The Heresy of Heresies, a Defense of Christian Common Sense Realism. In that work, I tried to offer a robust account of the nature of being or the nature of existence from a common sense Christian point of view. And this paper here, the portion I'm going to walk you through, will continue with that metaphysics, that metaphysical project, and extend it on to a meta-ethics. So the account of the good that I think anyone has to give in order to defend something like the Declaration of Independence, written by our founders of the United States, has to be able to give a concomitant account of not only the nature of reality, a metaphysics, and I do that in my book, The Heresy of Heresies, a defense of Christian common sense metaphysical realism, but also an account of truth, and epistemology. In my book on Introductions to Theories of Truth, I defend a robust metaphysical realist correspondence view of truth that's consistent with thinkers like Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas and Dallas Willard and other great thinkers like Jesus and St. Paul, among others. Well, you can read the book and see if I'm right about that. So I'll read this paper in parts of it and maybe do a couple videos on it, and we'll just see how it goes. So again, the title is From Being to Goodness to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. So in this paper, I consider the relationship between the nature of existence and goodness, and how existence and goodness relate to the self-evident truth that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. I argue that we can know the nature of existence from common sense experience. So in other words, common sense, there's kind of a dearth of that. great lack of that within our culture. We can know from the nature of existence from common sense experience, and from this knowledge, we can know what goodness is. Given our knowledge of existence and goodness, given the knowledge of those two things, we can see the self-evident truth that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. Now, again, you don't have to have before your mind, or even worked out in your own mind, an account of the nature of goodness and the nature of being and truth, in order to see that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. Those are graspable things, just like you can tell the sky's blue, or there's a tree behind me, or there's water in this pool. I mean, of course, you could be hallucinating, but given ordinary common sense perception, you don't have any good reason to doubt that. So too, given ordinary common sense experiences of the world we live in and the kinds of things that human beings are and our awarenesses of their natures, anybody that just thinks about it can see the goodness and the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What the philosopher should do, what I'm trying to do, is not only just say that those things are knowable and obvious, but that they can be defended, seriously defended, and can only be defended by a robust account of a metaphysical realist view of existence and a view of truth. And that produces a meta-ethic, a nature of the good, which in turn serves as the foundation for, or the grounding, if you like to put it that way, of the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so that's why I think sometimes people get a little confused about well, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't defend that. You can't know those because you have to know all this other stuff. Answer is that's just silly. I mean, I might be able to know the sky's blue, but I can't give you a full account of why it's blue, right? I mean, I could if I looked into and understood the nature of color spectrums and the water vapor in the air and the way that light refracts off. I mean, okay, we could do that. But to know the sky's blue, you just look at it. just look, right? To know that humans have unalienable rights, just look at human beings. You'll see that they have those rights inherent. Okay. So what philosophy does is it gives a defense of those. Why is that? Just in the same way that science can explain why the sky is blue, so philosophy can explain why life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. And that's what this paper tries to do, to serve as that kind of philosophical basis or grounding. Okay. So back to the paper. Given our knowledge of existence and goodness, we can see the self-evident truth that life, liberty, and happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. So first I rely on the work of Jacques Maritain in his Essence and Existence, and I argue that we can know the nature of existence, or being itself. I argue from a direct awareness of the nature of existence found through common sense experiences that we can know that existence is essential exemplification. So I've argued this in my previous work. This will serve as the foundation for our knowledge of goodness and ultimately of unalienable human rights. And then second, relying on four of Aquinas' arguments for the identity of being and goodness, argue that while Aquinas' arguments are logically valid, their soundness does not depend on additional deduction, but on direct awareness of the nature of both being and goodness. And I'll argue that given that any rational inquirer can be directly aware of the nature of being, it is also possible to be directly aware of the nature of goodness through an experience of the desirableness of existence. And I'll say more about what I mean by desirableness. It's appetency in Latin, and it should be better translated as aimatness, or the teleological directionality, or something like that. Desirable seems to incorporate minds into it, and in some way that's right when it comes to God's mind and our mind. But even if you weren't sure about God's mind, if you didn't know about God's mind, or even human minds, you can still see there's an aimatness, and call that desirability or natural appetency, if you like. Okay, so then this section of the paper will focus on both the validity and the soundness of Aquinas' arguments to the conclusion that being and good are the same in reality. And then third, I'll argue that from our knowledge of good, we can see that being and good persons and living good lives contain the self-evident knowledge that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are in fact unalienable rights. I'll argue that this is especially the case through our knowledge of ourselves existing as human beings, because I'll argue that human well-being is ontologically rooted in the existence of being human. Okay, so now I think this is the way our founding fathers argued this as well in the Declaration of Independence. Fourthly, what I'm going to do is argue that knowledge of goodness and knowledge of goodness itself and of human goodness are merely necessary but not sufficient conditions for achieving a good life. Okay, so to know what is good and to know what human goodness are necessary for living your own life well. If you don't know what that is, if you don't know what it is to be good or what goodness is, it's pretty tough to figure out how to live well. So you need those. If you lack them, it's going to be difficult to live a good life. But they're not sufficient. You can know both these things and not live a good life, right? And we can talk about that some more in another video. So I'll try to specify the ontological lacuna, that's a gap, hole, like a lacunae, in human nature, which prevents human beings from perfectly good lives, both personal and political. I'll conclude with some philosophical reflections on how these lacuna might be filled. Okay, so a little introduction. This is kind of whet your appetite. Again, the whole view here is that when it comes to the celebration of the 250th birthday of the United States, our semi-quincentennial, 250 years. It's good. It's been a good run. Think we can do another 250? I think so. I think we got a lot more 250-year marks to celebrate. Not sure any of this will be for them, but I think we'll get there. So again, what I'm trying to do is defend the idea that what our founding fathers said was right, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are real ontological values that are grounded in human nature, and that's ultimately grounded in realist metaphysics and a realist view of truth. And both of those are important factors in understanding the meta-ethics, the account of the nature of the good or goodness itself, which in turn gives a robust foundation for the objectivity of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness being unalienable rights, in my view, negative rights. All right. So thanks for watching this little introduction, and the next couple of videos on this topic will go a little deeper. So thanks for watching.
Stay psyched, Grom. You.